may be listening in to. Welcome back to Healthy Living, Happy Life, the podcast where I spill the beans on what really happens in midlife. Because let's be honest, nobody told us what to expect. Nobody gave us a heads up on any of this stuff. Maybe we heard about hot flashes and night sweats, but that's about all people told us. And there's so much more to know. I'm Denise Stiegel, and today we're talking about something that sneaks up on us when you least expect it. And I call this the Meno-Belly. You know what I mean? One day you're rocking those, your favorite jeans, and the next day you wake up and you look like you got one of those flotation devices around your waist. Now, granted, maybe this doesn't exactly happen overnight. We know that. But slowly and steadily it does creep up on you. At first just kind of like a little pinch. Oh, it can pinch an inch. Oh, but that in menopause is a sign, right? So here's the thing though, it is more than just about weight, right? Menopause changes the way our body stores fat, and these changes are directly linked to heart health, diabetes, and metabolism shifts. So today I'm going to go beyond the belly and dive into some science of what's happening, why it matters, and what you can do about it. And there will be I think this will be part one. There'll be a part two next week as well, right? So grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee, green smoothie, whatever floats your boat, and let's get started. So Meno-Belly, it's not just you. And it's absolutely not your fault. There's nothing that you have really done to make this just kind of magically appear, right? But when we gain weight, we naturally think, oh, we've got to go on a diet. We've got to exercise more. And that's actually not really the answer. These are things that can actually make things worse when it comes to hormones, because your cortisol goes up, and then all sorts of cascading challenges happen. Now, granted, you should be paying attention to what you eat. You should be eating a healthy diet, right? And you should also be moving as much as possible. We know that that's part of a healthy lifestyle. What used to work, even last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, does not work anymore. I know that sucks, but it's reality. So what is actually happening when we hit what we call menopause and our waistline suddenly expands? Let me just backtrack a quick second. Of course, when we're talking about menopause, we really are talking about the period from perimenopause into menopause, which is actually your 12-month anniversary of having your last period. That next day, you are postmenopausal, and you are postmenopausal for the rest of your life, right? If you're 50 today, your estimated life expectancy is at least 33 years. So that's 33 years postmenopausal. And you want to look and feel good, right? You want to optimize your health. So what's actually happening here, right? We know we have a decrease of estrogen. So as the estrogen is decreasing, it's increasing fat storage. And I'll talk about fat a little bit more in a minute. Before we went through this menopause phase, estrogen helped to regulate the fat distribution, which meant it was spread much more evenly, right? And as it declines, for whatever reason, it prefers to just kind of concentrate on your abdomen. So what else is happening? Testosterone does play a role here too. Yes, women, we do have testosterone, obviously a lot less than men. And the testosterone does not decline as quickly as estrogen. Again, this is another thing that leads to that shift in fat distribution. Another thing that's going on is your insulin resistance increases. When our body becomes less efficient at for processing glucose, right? Carbs become glucose. It makes it easier to gain weight, again, especially around our middle. Something also that's going on that's really frustrating that we can't really do anything about we talk about menopause, we always think estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. There are a lot of other hormones, kind of going kind of wacky here too. And these two are really frustrating because these two totally go rogue on us, right? The first one is leptin. This is your feel good. Oh, sorry, I'm full hormone. Feel good is something else. So your leptin is what the hormone that makes you think you are full or makes you feel full. That actually decreases, right? So you're always kind of feeling like you're hungry. On the flip side, the kissing cousin to leptin is ghrelin, or gremlin, as I like to call it, and that's the hungry hormone. And that one increases. So your body doesn't think it's not full on the one hand, and now you're feeling hungry all the time. So you feel hungrier, you crave more carbs, and you have a harder time actually feeling satisfied after meals. Like you could have a regular meal that you'd had many times before, but all of a sudden having that same exact meal, you're not satisfied. You're still feeling hungry. And of course, what is the result here? Meno-Belly. It's kind of like that uninvited guest to the party that just won't leave, right? Back in the day, when people came to visit, when they had outlived their welcome, the host would put a pineapple on their bed. Basically to say, okay, thank you very much for coming to visit. Now get the heck out of here. Now, if we can only do that with Meno-Belly and say, okay, we're done with you, get out of here, wouldn't that be easier? But here's the thing, though, with this Meno-Belly, with that weight around your abdomen. Your pants don't fit the same. Dresses don't fit the same. Tops don't fit the same. And what we tend to do is we tend to wear clothes that kind of hide the Meno-Belly, but at the same time, as we're doing that, we actually kind of accentuate the fact that it's there, right? So it's really more than what you look like or how you look. Now, of course, that obviously plays a big role in the way we feel about ourselves, our confidence. That is something very important. I'm not touching on that today. So I don't want to dismiss the fact that when we don't look good, we don't feel good, our confidence kind of goes in the toilet, right? That is very important, but we're not going to go there today. Okay. This is more about your long-term health. Like I am the longevity concierge for midlife women, right? Because this is about the long term. What's going to happen after tomorrow, after you hit that day after you hit your menopause day? What's going on for those next 33 or more years? Like that's really where we need to start thinking. Yes, today, if we're dealing with symptoms, we need to take care of those. And there are lots of ways we can do that. But truly, this is truly going to affect your long-term health. How you look is one thing, but how you feel, and literally whether you have a disease or illness or not. So let's talk a little bit about the menopause heart connection, a little bit more, and why this belly fat is that red flag. Once you start to notice that, it's like, okay, something more is going on here, right? Because it is more than a hormonal shift. This is a cardiovascular event. Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but stay with me here. Some of this information is eye-opening because it's not something that we have been told. Now, if you are like me and you've done research, for me, I've done many, many years of research because I started perimenopause when I was in my mid to later 30s and really experienced some serious symptoms. So for me, this is not news. Though interestingly, every time I read something new or there's a new research, I'm always surprised by the research. These are things that some of these things are is information that they kind of did know. I mean, there's 50 years of research on estrogen, but it's really only been coming out in the last maybe 10 or 12 years. And for some people, not even that, because we know our gynecologists and many of our doctors are really not versed in the research or the information that's out there. They're just not reading the information. So, did you know that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of postmenopausal women? Not breast cancer, so we're all afraid of, right? not osteoporosis, heart disease. So what's happening to your heart during menopause, right? Estrogen protects our blood vessels. Estrogen is a cardioprotector. So when it declines, our arteries become stiffer and less flexible. That increases our blood pressure. As I mentioned before, there are 50 years of studies that estrogen prevents, or more truthful, let's actually use a better term, lowers your risk of heart disease, because nothing is 100% preventable, right? So even when we say this prevents something, it really is, it's lowering your risk. And I say that because I have a medical director here in my house. My husband is a physician. So when I say prevention, he actually asks questions that I go do more research on. And truly, it is about lowering your risk. So, ladies, if you're debating whether or not you should take estrogen for symptoms or anything else, there's a program that I saw not all that long ago. It is back from 2012, so I realized that is 12 years ago. But it really was a great program that had several doctors speaking on estrogen and why this is important for women to start estrogen and HRT hormone therapy. You know, there are many different aspects to that. Again, whether you go traditional or bioidentical, whatever that may be. But this program is called Hot Flash Havoc, right? Because that's where we think we start. You know, oh, we're having hot flashes, but that's just, you know, the start of the fire. Let's just say. Again, it's called Hot Flash Havoc, and truly, in 1 hour, you will have a better understanding of the role of estrogen on your overall health. Not just that, but how well you feel, quality of life. I know so many older women, my mother included, who have all sorts of minor things, but they kind of add up. One, thyroid disease, your hormones, when your hormones are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because I mean, let's be real, at some point in the life of a human, you know, we didn't live this long, but we're living pretty long now. So it's really important to understand that the role of hormones in your entire body, I mean, estrogen has something like 400 jobs to do. We're talking about one or two, right? And it does so much more. So really, really an important to understand. Again, it's called Hot Flash Havoc. I did find it on YouTube. That's really the only place I could find it. So please take the time to look at that. I'm always going to be here to give you some statistics and to give you some resources. And this is one that I found really, really helpful based on some of the information. So what else is going on? Like I said, it's just not one thing, right? So your cholesterol levels change. Yep, cholesterol, you know, those, you know, you got to get your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol. Yeah, your LDL, that's your bad cholesterol, actually increases. Great, right? Not anything you're doing. It just increases, which raises your risk of artery clogging plaque, which can increase your, has your heart pumping harder, which eventually can cause stroke and heart attacks. So, well, that sucks. I don't know about you, but I don't want that to happen. So we need to pay attention to that. And then, of course, on the flip side, your HDL, which is your good cholesterol, of course, goes the opposite way, right? Of course, one goes up, one goes down, meaning your heart has less protection, obviously, right? So the next piece I want to talk about is fat. I mean, that's kind of what we started talking about, right? The Meno-Belly, the fat around the abdomen. So there are two types of fat. Two types. Now, if you're looking at me on video, I just have 4 fingers, 2 on each. Only 2 types of fat. Subcutaneous fat, and that's the fat that's under your skin that is kind of throughout your body. You know, you can kind of pinch it a little here, when you kind of do that, I said before, like pinch an inch on your waist, that's the subcutaneous fat. And that's usually more equally distributed around your body, and can be adapted through your lifestyle modifications, right? If you exercise a little bit more, you do some weightlifting, you'll notice that that type of fat can go away, right? The other type, and this is the not so good type, is the visceral fat. And that is the deep belly fat. And unlike the fat that's on your hips and thighs, and maybe even a little here on your arms, visceral fat actually wraps around your organs. Okay. Important to know. This increases inflammation and can lead to high blood pressure, stroke, and diabetes. These are really not fun things, right? High blood pressure, stroke, this is all heart disease. Diabetes can directly lead to heart disease. Oh my gosh, these things are all connected, right? So we want to make sure that we are cardio protecting, we are protecting our heart health. Now, in some degree, or to some degree, we do need some visceral fat to support the organs, right? Again, but too much is going to lead to insulin resistance, inflammation, and like I said, all of those challenges with metabolic syndrome, right? Women who experience menopause and postmenopause actually fight with this more than women kind of in that post-menopause, that perimenopause phase, right? As you're going through, it kind of gets, more and more. So if you're noticing, perimenopause, those are those earlier years. You don't notice it as much, but as we progress through menopause, postmenopause, as we get older, right? But this is good news. Yay. Visceral fat responds to lifestyle change. So there was a study that I found in Circulation, I think it was called. And again, it found that decline in estrogen accelerates cardiovascular disease, meaning those years before and after menopause, like I just said. And this is critical for your heart health. Okay, I know I just kind of repeated myself, but I think it's really important to note that there are studies being done about this. This isn't just some article that people are writing on on the internet. This is true information from studies that are being done. And we're really fortunate that nowadays that there are more studies being done on women, especially women going through menopause. Here's something that was really, really shocking to me. Early menopause increases your risk for heart disease and diabetes. Now, what is that? If you hit menopause before 40, okay, so listen up if that was you. Now that could be if you had, surgery that, kind of, shocked you into menopause, or if just naturally, your body just went through menopause at an earlier age. Women who experience early menopause, again, have double the risk of developing coronary artery disease. What can help prevent that? Estrogen is protective. So you're seeing the connection here, right? I hope. You're also more likely to develop type 2 diabetes due to changes in insulin resistance. Now think about it. If you are going through this earlier, we already know inflammation and insulin resistance is part of this challenge that we have through menopause. But if you've gone through and you're 50, it's a lot different. It's 10 years later than if you were 40. So these are things that we really need to pay attention to. Again, very often it's not something that your doctor really understands. And if you're talking to a doctor and they're just not on the same page, I do recommend find somebody who will listen to you, find somebody who will read the literature. Okay. It is so important because this is your health, not theirs. You must be your own advocate for your health. So, of course, there's a study that I found from National Institute of Health, but this particular surgeon whose name I'm not going to say right, or sorry, doctor, Dr. Samer, I'm going to call him Khoudary, Khoudary. Probably should have figured out how to spell to pronounce that before I started talking, huh? He is actually a leading menopause researcher. So I'm doing more research on him, on his research. And he put it this way: over the last 2 decades, we've learned a lot about how menopause contributes to heart health. Hot flashes and night sweats aren't just annoying, they are linked to greater risk of high blood pressure, greater strain on your heart, i.e., coronary heart disease, potentially heart attack, which I started to say earlier in this conversation is the number one killer of postmenopausal women. All tied up in a little nice little bow, right? So when you think menopause, it's just, yes, we are dealing with the night sweats and the mood swings and all of that, but think beyond that. We need to think about our heart and what's really going on. What is taking care of our heart, or the opposite, harming our hearts. So what do we do? Right? This is all great information, Denise, but now what do I do? You're not powerless here. This is one of the things that I think is really important, because I know when my mother was younger and she was going through menopause, though she swears she really didn't experience anything. My sister and I beg to differ. But anyway, they kind of just, whatever the doctor said, they did. And whether she realized it or not, no, she was on Premarin, which is HRT. And around that time, I guess, the women's study, huge women's study, and you'll hear about this, me talking about the women's study many, many times, if you haven't already. They actually abruptly stopped it because there was a lot of controversy around how the study was done and who was doing all sorts of things. What it seems may have also been a contributing factor is money. There you go. I just said it. These are things that we know happen, right? But what we're finding is that people are studying menopause more, older, mature women. Now, again, the study, the women's study, just to mention, they were really focused on heart disease and breast cancer, but their people were put on estrogen at a much later age. So the women that I'm talking to here, ladies 45, 50, 55, 60, depending on where you are in your phase of menopause, they do say within 10 years of menopause, that's kind of the sweet spot for taking estrogen. Now, there was a lady on that program that I mentioned, Hot Flash Havoc, who is 80 years old, and she's still taking estrogen. And listen to her, because her conversation is really poignant. And I think for many women of her age, had they had the opportunity to stay on hormones for a longer period, they would be struggling with fewer challenges, whether it's high blood pressure, high cholesterol, thyroid issues, brittle hair, all sorts of things, right? But anyway, so like I said, you're not powerless. You can do something. And so here's just a couple of quickie things. And again, this will be part one. There'll be a part two. The first and foremost, and I've heard this so many times, and as an athlete, I've always paid attention, but not as closely as I did when I really started to experience menopausal symptoms. Now, again, I started experience perimenopause at 37, but I was in my early 40s when I started to really struggle. So strength training, non-negotiable, ladies. And I don't mean just picking up a 5-pound weight. I could do this. No. Now, I'm not saying that you need to, be a Olympic weightlifter, but your muscle mass naturally is going to decline during menopause, especially post-menopause. Lifting weights will reverse that. And you can't reverse it when it's gone so far. When you've completely lost all your muscle mass, you can't build it. But you can keep it, you can actually keep yourself from losing it, right? If you're doing strength training now, at 50, and I'm going to just keep saying 50 because 50 is kind of a round number, right? If you start your training now, hopefully you've been doing some weight training, but at this stage, this is where you need to start. I would recommend find somebody who understands weightlifting for menopausal women, because it's different. It just you need something different. Again, I mentioned earlier, what worked then doesn't work now, and you even need to strength train very differently. Why do we want more muscle? One, we look good. We look better when we have more muscle, right? But more muscle equals a higher metabolism, equals less belly fat. Go back to the belly fat, right? Go that Meno-Belly. We get rid of the Meno-Belly. So it's recommended a couple of times a week, 2-3 times a week, can reduce visceral fat. Again, as menopause is different for all of us, training is going to be different for you too. And again, depending on where you are, if it's perimenopause, you may feel you have less energy than you do when you're postmenopause. I mean, it's crazy how everybody just experiences things very, very differently. So you need to find what works for you. And this is the number one thing that I talk about all the time, really. It's eat real food. You need to balance your plate to balance your hormones, right? And we can balance our hormones as much as we can with our food and our lifestyle. There are other contributing factors that we may not have control over. And that's where talking with your doctor, whether, you go on HRT or bioidentical or a patch or a pill, whatever it may be, right? There's so many options. But if you're eating, hopefully, if you're eating the right foods, you're going to feel better. You're going to look better, right? And so what are those? Number one, protein, protein, protein. Protein is your best friend. It helps with muscle retention and it keeps you fuller longer. Now, I was always one of these people who wanted to be a vegetarian, and I do follow still a very plant-forward diet, but I make sure first and foremost, I get my protein. Whether I have to drink a protein shake, which I typically have to do to get the amount of protein that my body needs, I do drink a protein shake every single day. I tend to like a cleaner protein shake, and this one that I really like is a plant-based one. But the plant-based ones have fewer protein in them, right? Than a whey or a whey protein shake. I mean, for example, the one that my husband has is a regular one that we just buy at the store, and it's got 40 grams of protein. The cachava that I buy from their website, it has 24. So that's about half. So if you think about it, yes, I'm a woman and I'm smaller, but still I need to focus on my protein. So every now and then, when I know I've been low for the week, I make sure that I take one of his protein shakes. That's how we go through them. He's like, where did they all go? I'm like, well, I don't know. You must have drank them. Anyway, so protein, protein, protein. Fiber. Fiber helps stabilize your blood sugar, right? And stable blood sugar, stable energy levels, right? So that's a good thing. Healthy fats, avocados, nuts, olive oil. People will always say to me, oh, but Denise, they have more calories. Yes, I don't care. We know that these are foods that support our heart health and our hormone production. Now, I'm not saying to eat a freaking avocado every freaking day, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying to add avocados, add some nuts. And nuts, I have a friend who used to have, get one of those big jars, here we go, big jars of nuts at Costco. And in a week, the whole thing would be gone because every time he walked by it, he would grab a handful of nuts. And so maybe he did this 3 or 4 times a day, right? And sometimes he would miss lunch, and that would be another handful of nuts, which they're great, except yes, they do have a ton of calories. So, when it comes to calories, you have to make sure that you're balancing, as I started to say, balancing your plate to balance your hormones, right? You can't just be eating fat. You need to be eating some protein, and you do need carbohydrates, which is the next one. And that is, you want to get rid of the refined carbs and simple sugars, which spike your insulin or some body fat, right? Instead, you want to make sure you're eating whole grain carbs, your healthy carbs, your fruits, your vegetables, your whole grains, your beans and legumes, seeds and those kinds of things, right? Those are the healthy carbs. I mentioned a few minutes ago that, in my heart of hearts, I want to be plant forward, or plant-based. Well, guess what? If I'm eating these healthy carbs, I am plant forward. Right? I'm focusing on them as well as my protein. I know the amount of protein I need to get every day. I do try to get a close to 100 grams. Now, sometimes it's closer to 80 grams, and I'm okay with that. So that is important. But when I'm making a meal, there absolutely has to be veggies along with that protein and a healthy fat. And with your healthy fat, if it's olive oil, you just need a little bit of olive oil. If you're having a salad, use a really good quality olive oil. You just need a little sprinkle, a little dabble or whatever, give it a name. So the third piece, when it comes to some of the things you can do, and I said this before, you want to move more, sit less. So I'm sitting down now doing this podcast, and it's about 3:30 in the afternoon. I sat down about 25 minutes ago when I started this podcast. The rest of the day, I have a standing desk. The rest of the day, since I got down to my office, I've been standing. Now, when you're standing, think about this. I'm not standing still like a soldier. I don't know how they do that, by the way. I'm kind of moving, from one foot to the other. I'm not necessarily just, standing like a soldier, but I'm moving. There is movement there. And if you just 30 minutes a day, can lower your blood pressure and help with weight management. Now, I always recommend a little bit more than that, but if you're just starting, you got to start somewhere, right? The other thing that I think is really important, and this is something that I'm not always great about, stretching, flexibility. So yoga, Pilates, those are great things to keep your joints happy, basically. They're low stress. Even swimming is a full body exercise. But it's easy on your joints because, you're buoyant in the water, right? And then the last piece I'll just mention is managing your stress. Earlier I said, we think of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are really the hormones in question, but there are so many more that, I mentioned ghrelin and leptin. How about cortisol? Yes, cortisol affects your belly fat. I mean, it's kind of like, when you have a lot of stress and a lot of cortisol, it's like, cortisol belly magnet. Oh my gosh, it just sucks right there. Chronic stress increases cortisol. Now, so many of us are running ourselves ragged. We're busy doing this, going here, saying yes to things that we don't really enjoy or are that interested in. We're constantly looking at the news and looking at social media. And all of these things increase our cortisol because it's stressful. I mean, I don't know how many times, and I'm pretty good about not looking at my phone most of the day. In the morning, I will take a look at social media, see what I need to do for my business. But the rest of the day, because it's all a bunch of crapola. Like there's nothing on social media that I really need to know. Now, if I need news, things like that, I know where I can find a good source of news. But I go and it's on for 1 hour, maybe a half an hour, and that's it. Right? We need to learn how to step back from all of the noise and all of the stress that we can't control. Right? And when you do feel overwhelmed by the news, by the conversations that we're having today, by social media, stop, slow down. Deep breathing exercises are great. Deep breathing exercise, just deep breathe, breathe deeply just once. Ready? I already feel better. I get myself up in a tizzy because I'm so excited to talk to you about these things because it's so important for you to have knowledge. The knowledge that you have will help you to live better, feel better, and really be able to enjoy your life, today, tomorrow, and in those 33 years plus post-menopause, right? So I guess the to wrap up this particular podcast, everyone, with all of these changes in your hormones, it's really important to transition through menopause with good information and tools in your toolkit, right? Information is key. Also, knowing your body, listening to your body, paying attention to your body. These are the things that only you can do, right? I'm obviously here to help or support you, point you in a good direction. Um, if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and more importantly, please share this with any woman you know who needs this information. Okay. Just before I go, just want to mention my monthly menopause wellness series called Hormones to Harmony. We go way deeper into myths, facts, get your questions answered, and honestly, find a place where you feel like you're not alone. Because, ladies, there are something I had to wrote this down yesterday. 1.2 billion women in menopause. Why are we going through this alone? With all of those people, your best friend is going through menopause. Your sister is probably going through menopause, right? They may be experiencing something completely different, but it's all menopause. And each one of us, whether their symptoms, whatever symptoms they have, we all need to understand how this affects our heart health, our bone health, and of course, our mental health. So um, Hormones in Harmony, the wellness series, that's once a month. It's the first week of every month. Please go to my website and find out a little bit about that. If you'd rather have a personalized strategy call, please do that. Let's schedule some time together because your best health starts today and only you can take that step. So until next time, ladies and a few smart men, stay strong, stay informed, stay fabulous, healthy living, happy life. I'll see you next time.